Good evening and welcome to the March 12, 2024 meeting of the Abington Board of School Directors. I note the attendance of all board members with the exception of Dr. Mowry. Please rise for the pledge. Thank you. And pardon me for Dr. Mowry, who is excused for this evening. The Abington Board of School Directors has convened this evening's meeting at the Administration Building, and the public is welcome. In consideration of the health and safety of the school community, this meeting is also being broadcast live on the Abington School District YouTube channel. This meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the district's website and cable channel no later than Friday, March 15, 2024, to allow those members of the public who cannot participate to view the proceeding at a later time. Comments from citizens will be conducted both in person and by phone. Information regarding participating remotely in public comment will be displayed on the screen at the time of public comment, and the board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. This is a place where we truly hold dignity and high regard. Both your presence and your voice are welcome in this space. Dr. Fetcher, any additional announcements for this evening before we begin?
No additional announcements at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any board business to be brought about from my fellow board members before we start with opening comments? Opening comments, Mr. Allen?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Frazier?
I enjoyed Fiddler on the Roof. Thank you to all of our actors and actresses and all the participants and staff.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of attending all 4 Abington Middle School Raise Your Voice performances. Outstanding. Congrats to all the students and staff that were involved. It was really just a wonderful experience.
Ms. Spalding?
No, nothing at this time.
Mr. Muhammad?
Just want to say Ramadan Mubarak to all the Muslims in Abington, Rockledge, and across the globe. May your Ramadan be peaceful, safe, full of faith, and that your fast is accepted.
Thank you. Ms. Fazy?
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Hartman?
I also was able to attend the Fiddler on the Roof, and it was wonderful. Congratulations to everybody who was involved, and Ramadan Mubarak to everybody who observes.
Excellent, I agree. I want to say tradition, but I'm not, I just did. Dr. Fetcher, anything?
Following that, I'd just like to congratulate both the middle school and the high school on excellent performances, and I'd like to thank the students for their dedication, as well as the parents of the students. I know that with children of my own, that takes a toll on the family to make sure that our kids are where they need to be, and it's a lot of dedication for an entire family to do that. So we appreciate that. I appreciate all the staff that is involved in the countless hours of these performances, and it truly brings our community together in both of the buildings, and the talents are amazing, and I wish that I had a modicum of the talent that our students have.
It truly was outstanding. I was definitely blown away. Dr. Fetcher, please proceed with our student council members this evening.
Okay, first we're going to start with Abington Senior High School and Kennedy Grasso.
Good evening, Dr. Fetcher, Mrs. Brown, and the members of the Board of School Directors. My name is Kennedy Grasso, and I'm the Vice President of the Student Council Executive Board. It is an honor to be able to step in for our President, Jonah Campbell, and be here with you all tonight. To start, the freshman class hosted their annual formal on February 10th. There were about 150 students in attendance, and it was a great first dance for their class. Throughout January and February, 20 Abington students participated in training through the Anti-Defamation League, where they learned skills to combat anti-Semitism and racism and how to be an upstander in the face of social bias. It was an extremely informative training that has truly expanded these students' minds. From February 21st to 23rd, Abington's business club DECA traveled to Hershey to participate in a statewide competition. They have been working for months to prepare projects in fields such as marketing, community improvement, and finance. Ms. Davoli, the club sponsor, hosted a career chatter with many members of the Abington faculty acting as judges on February 7th to help the students prepare for the competition. It was a great experience for all students interested in a future in business and entrepreneurship. During February, different school-sponsored organizations also participated in community service acts to spread love during this Valentine's Day season. The Student Council Executive Board collected cards for the first 2 weeks of February for elderly people in nursing homes. It went better than we could have ever imagined, and we collected almost 100 cards. These cards were then taken to the Lafayette Redeemer Senior Living Facility with the Abington Chorale when they went to perform at the center's annual Valentine's Day celebration. As the winter sports season ended, Abington had many reasons to be proud of its amazing athletic program. Both girls and boys basketball teams made it to the district playoffs, the boys for the 12th consecutive year. The wrestling team had many athletes qualify for districts, and Gracie Clifton was recognized as the Suburban 1 first female wrestling champion. Both girls and boys indoor track and swimming had athletes qualify for district and state competitions and set multiple new school records. A big congratulations to all these athletes and the coaches who helped make it possible. To end February, the Abington Theater Department performed this year's spring musical, Fiddler on the Roof. The cast, crew, and faculty worked tremendously hard and put on a fabulous show. As we begin March, congratulations to the 6 District Skills U.S. winners who attend Eastern, the 24 art students who participated in the advanced placement of Public Schools' annual Touch the Future art show at Montgomery County Community College, and both Abington Reading Olympics teams who won blue ribbons at their competitions. And finally, on March 7th, Abington Senior High School hosted its annual College and Career Fair with close to 100 representatives to meet with students, as well as sessions for both college-bound athletes and the first annual Mental Health and Wellness Fair. All 3 of these events were a great success and provided countless valuable resources for all students who attended. Once again, it was great to be here with you all tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kennedy. We appreciate your sharing all the great things that are going on at Abington Senior High School. And now I'm going to ask Sophia Dever to come up from Abington Middle School.
Good evening, Ms. Brown, Dr. Fetcher, and the members of School Board Directors. I'm Sophia Dever, and I'm on the Executive Board of the Student Council for Abington Middle School. Student Council is getting to work planning our 2nd annual Culture Day at Abington Middle School. We are excited to be able to feature the diverse culture makeup of our school community. Last month, Crochet and Knitting Club students donated over 30 crocheted and knitting squares to Project Chemotherapy. This is an organization that collects squares to make blankets for people undergoing chemotherapy. In coordination with the Giving Tree, National Junior Honor Society members made care packages for Meals on Wheels to provide local senior citizens with healthy and nutritious snacks. Students in our Teens Against Drugs and Alcohol Club took a second group of members to Beat Street in February, so an additional 140 students could enjoy an evening of music, dancing, and getting picture taken with their friends in the photo booth. Later in the month, we had a movie night in the AMS Little Theater. During intermission, we gave away door prizes and held some movie trivia contests with chances to win prizes. Art Club students have been busy creating some beautiful sculptures, clay pieces, and amazing paintings. Students learned how to talk about their families and learned a new ASL game to practice their receptive language and speed this month in American Sign Language Club. And this past month, in the Going Green Club, students updated rocks for the Abington Middle School Rock Garden. They also started filling out their blankets for Mammal Madness. Students are provided with this information about the animals to help them make an informed decision. The AMS Musical was proud to present our spring production of Raise Your Voice on March 7th through March 9th. Over 80 students took part in the cast and crew. We look forward to hosting a cast and crew party, dance workshop, and 8th grade award ceremony later in the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot going on at Abington Middle School as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Kennedy and Sophia, for coming and sharing with us. We appreciate your voices. Dr. Fetcher, can you please proceed with this evening's honors?
Yes, Mrs. Brown. Our first honor this evening, I'm going to ask Ms. Ali Artur, Communications Coordinator, to share video highlighting recent media coverage of Abington School District.
Good evening, Dr. Fetcher, Mrs. Brown, and members of the board. Tonight, I'm pleased to share with you a news clip from 6ABC's Catherine Scott, who recently visited Abington Senior High School to profile our Modern Music Makers, or M3 program. And the segment is timed to Music in Our Schools Month, which is celebrated each March. Please enjoy.
March is Music in Schools Month. One Montgomery County teacher is leading his own School of Rock.
The award-winning program is helping aspiring musicians, and Action News reporter Catherine Scott has a story from Abington.
This program started in the pandemic on Zoom. Since then, it has exploded. M3 is Abington Senior High School's musical industry program, short for Modern Music Makers.
The idea is to give them the opportunity and agency to make the kind of music that they want to do.
Kevin Longwell initially started the program during virtual learning, teaching kids basic production and how to start to record. But the initial model changed as students like current senior Taylor Shore return to the classroom. Students forming their own record label, creating and recording music that's uploaded for streaming under the name M3.
We're just like making beats and stuff. We told Mr. Longwell, we were like, we'd like some opportunity to perform, and that's when I really got into it.
I like that it gave you an opportunity to play your own kind of music.
Collaborations and performances added another layer to the typical music technology programs that have been growing in schools for years.
We have kids running lights and sound and media and video, and then we have other kids who, outside of the performance perspective, are recording and producing and editing.
M3 received national recognition, named an Advocacy and Action Award winner by Music for All for the program's student recruitment, engagement, and retention. Hundreds of students take part. Educators here tell me this program has also helped boost enrollment in more traditional music courses like choir or piano because these students want to refine their technical skills.
We give the kids a lot of authority as to what they do, and we kind of sit in the passenger seat and help to steer them along the way. For a lot of these kids, it ends up growing different things that they might be interested in and can use outside of school, whether they study music or not.
In Abington, Catherine Scott, Channel 6 Action News.
Wow.
Go, girl.
I know.
Hold that note.
These music programs are so much more advanced than when we were in school.
I had that recorder. Hot cross buns.
Cross buns. Oh my God, I played that on the violin. Oh my Lord.
It's a classic.
Ooh, we're dating ourselves. All right.
All right. That concludes our honors for this evening.
Excellent. Any comments before we move forward?
Well, I'd like to say that I enjoyed the Abington Reads program. I had the pleasure of going to Highland as well as Rydell to read to kids. And at the end of when I was at Highland, one little girl gave me a piece of paper. It was a drawing of me. She must have aged me by 30 years, but I'm going to keep it forever. It was adorable.
Thank you. Any other comments? Dr. Fetcher, please proceed with this evening's orientation.
Yes, Mrs. Brown. I would like to invite Mr. Phil Solomon, the Regional Manager of ICS Consulting, to present an update of ICS's work related to community engagement regarding the district's long-range facilities planning.
All right. Well, thank you for having me back. We have been hard at work gathering stakeholder input here in the last several months. I do have a lot of information, but I am going to try to go through it fairly quick. The good thing is this is all going to be posted on the microsite. So if anybody hasn't seen the microsite, it's oneasd1future.org. All this plus more will be up there. So source documents, this is just a high level. If I do move fast and I skip over something, please just stop me. Or if you think something needs a little more commentary, let me know. So quick agenda, we're going to look at the overall process. You've seen the process map before, but I'll give a quick refresher of that. We'll dive into the scientific survey results. That's a statistically accurate picture of the district, and a lot of information got pulled out of that. Just a high level on internal stakeholder surveys, then a little bit of a deep dive on what's called a thought exchange to help us prioritize the stakeholders' needs or what they believe are needs in each building, and then a little bit about how this works in the big timeline, and then just some milestones moving forward. So with that, I mean, we are kind of at the end of, I'll use the mouse here, of this communicate process and stakeholder input. So as I said before, that's a communications plan. That's all the microsite information, and then all the stakeholders input sessions that we've done, along with the community survey, some community outreach. So we're moving from the input phase over into this communicate findings and building solutions phase. So I'm going to go into that at the end, but really what we're trying to do is make sure we use all this stakeholder input to help inform the options so that we know we're shooting at the right thing based off of the people who actually use the spaces. Get into that a little bit more in a minute. So let's dive into the scientific survey. So this is a statistically accurate cross-section of Abington. And what this looks like, it's essentially 500 people agreed to be interviewed for about 15 to 20 minutes per person. And these 500 people represent the demographics of the district. So it's accurate within 4.5%. These interviews were conducted between the 11th and the 30th. So clearly people did want to talk about the district. So a lot of people are like, are you sure people are going to answer these? You'd be surprised. When they know you're not selling them something, they're interested in giving feedback. So let's start with some of the high-level pieces that we've found here. So these are called atmospherics. So we'll look at the pie charts here on the left. So when you ask people, what is the quality of education that they believe is given in Abington, we gave them 5 chances: excellent, good, fair, poor, unsure. Well, you can see 90% positive, with 49% saying an excellent quality of education and 41% saying a good. So that's a 90% positive rating. That's excellent. That is much better than most districts score. Then quality of education compared to what it was during the pandemic, you can see that 50% say it's improving, which is also better than most districts. A lot of places say it's been worse. So then we give them opportunities to agree or disagree with all these comments over here. Our community receives a good value from its investment in local public schools. 89% agree with that. Abington School District does a good job involving the community leaders and parents, interested citizens, and decisions. 81% agreed with that. I trust Abington School District to do what's right for the children. 85%. And then the success of Abington schools increases the property values of homes in our community. 82%. In terms of atmospherics, these are excellent. Anywhere else we were doing work, if these looked different, I'd say we need to pause and make sure we build the right trust with the community before we do anything larger. Here, you have a good listening community. Moving on to the next. So if you look at the table on the right, we asked several questions, and they could agree or disagree. During the last couple of years, the Abington School District has managed its budget effectively. 75% agree with that. Abington schools are a good investment, and I would support a property tax increase to protect that investment. That's usually a tough question, but 70% agreed with that. If you look at the pie chart on the left, do you believe the district is adequately funded? And that could mean a lot of different things, but just as a gut check, 52% said no, 40% said yes. So I think people are seeing that maybe the state's not kicking in as much as they should, or a variety of factors. If we look at the pie chart on the left, this is how do people perceive the actions that you've taken already. So was it a correct step to adopt the middle school model? And that's the 678 model that you did recently. It's overwhelming. 82% positive said yes, that was the right move to make. When you ask about were you confident in the plans for the high school was the right one for students and staff, 82% said yes at the high school. So a very large majority of the community agree with the decisions that were made thus far. When you ask follow-ups as about what's next on the list, what should we be investing in next, you'll see 29% said the middle school, 20% just said aging buildings, 15% said none, 5% said the high school, and then 16% were other or unsure. As you start to break this down, when you look at the elementary schools, on a 1 to 5 scale, we asked how important it is to invest in each one of these types of things. 5 would be critical, meaning it's a urgent, like water's leaking and we have to address it right now. 1 meaning it's not a priority. You can see on infrastructure at the elementary schools, this score is very high. Anything over a 3.5 is a high score on this scale. So that's like windows, roofing, increase efficiency, parking lots. We then followed up and said, do you think the investment of $15 million in the elementary schools, and it was listed out what you were investing in, was good? 73% agree with that. When you focus on the middle school, you can see that a lot of the infrastructure questions scored very high. ADA, codes, fire alarms, replacements, all of those things are in the upper 3.5 to 4. As you get into the educational component, scores a little lower, but still up there. So PE, arts, traffic safety, bringing grades closer together. Still solid scores, saying that things need to be done, so the community is aware that there are issues here. Now, as we dig in a little bit further, when you say, okay, well, what should be done? You have kind of, we call it the pollster's nightmare. About 30% say renovate the existing infrastructure. 25% say accelerate building maintenance to meet current building standards. 23% say replace, options to replace, or then something else. So there's no mandate that people have in their mind, which is fine. We haven't really started communicating options yet. We haven't even done pros and cons of what it could be, and we haven't matched any of this up with stakeholder input. So of course nobody's going to have an idea of what would be the best solution. When we start to ask about supporting investment, so a property tax increase. So of everybody, 23% said they would support $30 or more to support education. $20 or more was 24%, $10, 22%, none, 20%, and 11% were unsure. When you dig into that a little bit, you can see that 15% of your community is against any tax increase, no matter what. About 29% would support any tax increase that protected that education. And then there's 55% that essentially says we're listening. We're open to having this conversation. We need to understand the value equation before we could answer this question, which is great. That means that a good majority of the district is open or supportive. You know, some saying we already pay too much in taxes. When you ask about what would make you want to support the schools and you know, maybe pay a little bit more, these are the statements. Better schools make living in Abington and Rockledge more attractive choices for families with children. 92% agree with that statement. More efficient HVAC windows and other infrastructure can reduce energy use. 87% agree with that. Better schools improve our property values. 87% agree with that. Replacing equipment and making permanent repairs in the buildings will be less expensive than constantly spending on maintenance. So 85% agree. And you can see as we go down, creating healthier classrooms will improve performance, 85%. And then the last one is kind of interesting. Too many school districts wait until it's too late to address problems. I'd rather adopt a long-term plan and get it right the first time. 80% agreed with that. When you ask the big questions, do you believe that the district is considering the needs of staff and students? You see 82% agree with that. And if you ask if you're confident they are looking to invest tax dollars carefully, over 70% agree with that. So this community does trust the decision-making here. That is a good basis to start a big process. That's the end of the scientific survey. We also held the exact same survey online. Not scientifically, anyone could answer this, and it was all the same questions. What happened is we had 915 responses, and we're just kind of going to compare and contrast. So in district performance, very similar, very positive remarks. If there's any distinction, that's something that's maybe different than what we saw in the scientific survey. The only thing is there was more uncertainty in the answers, uncertainty of what to do. Financial issues, there was very few that agreed that local schools are adequately funded. The distinctions would be less were willing to support a tax increase to protect education. The recent initiatives, very high support for middle school, high school. The distinct is almost everyone agrees that the middle school should be next. Investment, they agree with the priorities and costs at the elementary school. And then they had higher scores for the middle school infrastructure and classroom issues. So I think the people within or closer to the district understand the middle school is more of an issue than somebody who doesn't have a connection with the district. For the middle school plan, only 1 in 5 agree that no tax increase is needed to address the middle school. And there's more support for replacing the middle school and more uncertainty on the tax level of that. Why invest? Almost the same. So just as a summary, and I'm sorry, that's a lot, but it's all available, and even the source documentation is going to be available. But just the takeaway summary is very high marks to local education and the decision-making that the district is making. Many or most agree that new investments are needed in the buildings. Focus attention on aging buildings, middle school first. Open to the discussion about property tax increases to support this. And still uncertain about what the best course of action, which is fine. We all are, so at this point. So just getting back into the stakeholder piece, that's all the online survey, and I know this is a lot of survey data, but we've really kind of gone through a lot of different components to try to make sure that we're getting it right and getting as many different voices in this process as possible. So we went through and had input from teachers, the Abington Community Task Force members, admin, facilities, transportation, parents, students, and teachers. So all of that is complete. I'm not going to go through all of it because we've actually presented a good amount of this at the board already. Some of it's also going to be on the microsite as well, but we asked what's called the 5 big questions. So what great things are happening? What are some challenges? If you won the lottery and had to spend it on the school district, what would you spend it on? What facility improvements are needed? That's kind of dipping your toe into the facility portion, and then what advice do you have for the school board? When we pulled all this together, we had over 750 participants, and we're laying all this out into specific presentations, which each group said, and we're going to put that all on the microsite. But all of this is coming together to inform what the next step is. So we had to dig in one more time at the building level. I know this is the last one, but so what we did was what's called a thought exchange. So we go to each building, talk to all the teachers and participants in that building, and say, what are the most pressing issues here? And how this works is they put in their ideas. So we need to address this, or the roof, or whatever it is. And then all the participants rate each thought. And what happens is the thoughts that are the highest rated are the ones that rise to the top. So it's a prioritization routine. So what you get is a distribution of what the most things that people agree need to be done have the most ratings to them. And then you'll see they taper off. So the actual question asked is, what important things should we consider as we continue to implement the school district's long-range plans, facility plans? Lots of input from this. So we did this at each building. High school had 163 participants, 241 thoughts, 7,900 ratings of those thoughts. Middle school, 156, 226 thoughts, 5,481. Not going to go through all of these, but I am going to give you one as an example, and I'll use the middle school so you can see kind of how this works. So when you go through this routine, what happens is the most important and pressing issues rise to the top, and this is among everybody's ratings and everything else. So middle school reconfiguration comes in at the top of the list. Then it's the building size and space, HVAC, school security, restrooms, learning environment, infrastructure and maintenance, furniture, student exterior, and they go on, but you can see they kind of have a distribution to them. When you dig into those and say, well, what exactly did they say? The middle schools should either be completely reconstructed or split into 2 middle schools that are smaller. That was the #1 rated thought. That was the one that came together most, and obviously that took the #1 spot. Even though the second one looks similar, building size and space, the spaces in the middle school, such as hallways and assemblies, are insufficient relative to the current instructional needs. Although that sounds similar, it's different, so it got a different rating. How this works is there's a AI routine in this whole thing, and it groups them together the way that they should be. It's one of the few ways that AI seems to be working really well that I've seen so far. So it helps to prioritize these and helps to group together common ideas to give you a good distribution. This goes all the way through each one. Not going to read it, each one, but you can see that it's been prioritized by the people who use the space. Now, we did this for every elementary school as well as the high school. I won't go through all of it. What we did was summarize it for the elementary school and then, drop it into themes. So you can see you have every elementary school here, number 1 theme, number 2 theme, etc. You can see something developing here. HVAC is like the top spot everywhere. You can see close behind that is school security concerns, custodial services, and then a whole bunch of other things. Elements of this are already being addressed by the school district. That's that $15 million project. They're using some of this data to prioritize and start biting away at some of the things that are the highest priorities right now. That's just a small piece of the total need, but it's a start. So back to this long-range planning process. So, we talked about gathering input. Well, now we've got to use that. We've got to distill it, combine it, and make sure that it's informing the options. And we're going to have to put some options together and see how well they match up with everything that people have said. This is kind of the all of us is smarter than one of us or some of us. What's going to happen is those are going to start to get developed into solutions. So options for solving the problems that everybody said were the most important. As those come together, we'll be putting together the financial pieces of those. What do they cost? How would they be funded? All of those pieces are going to start coming together at this point. We'll be utilizing all that input to inform those options, and then they will be presented to the school board as here are the options. That's not where it stops. We then want to take and test those options with all the stakeholders as well as with the community. So then we're going to say, okay, here's everything that we had so that everybody is aware of what we're looking at. We're going to go back out and look at how well those solve all the problems that people said they have. And then what does the community think about that? What kind of input do they have towards these? That's going to be kind of an optimization routine between this and this here. And then what typically happens is 1 or 2 options rise to the top. Often there's 2 ways to solve a problem that are, both sufficient. One might be a little better than the other, and there's going to be competing interests there. Usually you bring those back to the board for a final decision. If you're lucky, a single option gathers all the steam and it's easy, but that's typically not the case. So this process is going to, trail on for several more months. We're kind of at the beginning of it, not at the end. So we're kind of building this process as it goes, and all this information is going to inform it as we go as well. Any questions before I go into the next steps?
Thank you. Questions? I do, but you may answer it in the next steps.
Sure. Were you going to ask when were we shooting to get, when are we trying to get all this done?
Well, that and the community input, the community input, I'm interested in knowing when will community have another opportunity to ask questions beyond going to the micro site to do that?
Yes, good question. So, before there was any options developed, it's hard to ask for specific feedback on anything. So what's happening here is we're taking all of this, we're developing the options, and we're going to present them to the board first. Board is also going to have input and feedback on anything that's presented here. That's not for decision making, that's for, hey, we like this, we don't like that. So after that spot, right there, is when we're going to go back to all the different stakeholders, ask their opinion, gather that data for your input, go to the community, have some open forums for them to, maybe walk the buildings, talk about the options, provide input. We're going to gather all of that for the board as well. Those might be, we're looking at that kind of May timeline, but that's just the internal and external public at large. This could go on for several months because, we're trying to get it right, not fast. But yeah, the first target would be about May when we start getting additional input. Does that answer your question?
That does answer
Okay,
that
perfect.
question. Yes, thank you. Any additional questions?
I have one question for you. Could you expand on the scientific survey demographics? Like, I'm specifically interested in the number of residents that are parents versus non-parents in that subgroup, please.
Yeah, so I don't have like all the statistics. I can get those for you, but what happened is to build this scientific survey, they looked at the actual demographics from the last census. So all the different things that the census gathered, and what they did is they went through and they they statistically chose or whatever, people in each of those demographics and then made sure they were all represented. So the actual cross-section of that survey accurately represent the demographics of the last time that that was measured here in Abington.
Thank you, that answers my question.
Yeah, and there's, I can get you more on that and like how it breaks down and everything else if you'd like. We'll put that on the microsite as well.
Any additional questions? Is there a next part? Or
That's it.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make a few comments then. What I appreciate about this process is that it does take into account the voices of stakeholders. I'd like that the level of transparency that people can access 24 hours a day the microsite, and they can ask questions, and your standard is that an answer will be provided within 24 hours.
That's correct.
Right. I like that this is still an open process, and this is not necessarily 9 people making a decision, but again, it's taking into the account what are the needs that is driven by data and making sure that the public is informed so that they can be a part of this decision-making, and then ultimately the board will take it from there. Any other questions or comments?
I do want to commend the community for sitting on the phone for 15 to 20 minutes, for sitting at their computers and on their phones, completing the online survey, sharing information that we're already taking into account as we move forward into the next phase of this process. At the end of the day, most of the community feels that we're going to make the best decision for our children, and we're going to make that decision with as much input as possible from the community. So stay involved. When the call goes out to raise your voice some more, come on out and raise your voice some more. We're going to need you throughout this process.
I just wanted to clarify in terms of the questions, response time. We try to do it in a timely fashion. Sometimes that has been 48 hours, not within the 24, and I just want to be clear about that, because I know that there have been residents who have asked me why they haven't received a response in 24 hours. So it has come to us in that time period, and I just want to be clear about that, that in not all cases has it been in 24 hours.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. We definitely want to make sure we are living up to what we say. So within the 48 hours, community members are receiving responses. Okay. Any other questions?
So, and actually, very nice presentation, thank you. On this particular slide, like I see, it has different stakeholders, and it has teachers and then teachers union. Are there other staff members being, like why specifically the teachers union leadership and not the facilities association?
There are actually many in there. So if you look superintendent, cabinet, principals, they're all in there, but we just break them out segments, just so we can say, this is what this segment believes, and this is what this segment believes.
This is not the end-all be-all.
This is not the end-all be-all.
Okay.
Yeah, not the end-all be-all. It's just an example of some of them. And if you look at like some of the different input that we've taken so far, it really is a very wide cross-section, all the way to bus drivers and whoever else is actually using the facilities as well.
And the thought exchange, the informal survey versus the scientific survey. The scientific survey is 100% residents. It was a requirement.
Correct.
It's not just you're an employee here. It's you are a resident of.
No, yeah, you had to be a resident, have all the demographics. Yeah, it needed to be put together to have an accurate cross-section of the community, whereas the online survey, anyone could take it, and that was a request.
And then my last question is kind of just out of curiosity. Do you know about how many questions that you've received through the microsite?
I don't have that offhand. I could get it for you, certainly. It's been quite a handful.
It has
definitely,
been.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you are interested, they all are on the fact page, though. So all the answers get loaded on the frequently asked question page as well.
All right,
I can look for that. Look at that real quick.
Thank you very much. If there aren't any other questions, that takes us to the comprehensive plan and special education plan.
Yes, Ms. Brown. We may proceed. I'm going to ask Dr. James Melkor, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Tony Butts, Director of Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Robert Rosenthal, Director of Pupil Services, to provide an overview of the midpoint of the Abington School District Comprehensive Plan, which is from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. The orientation will also include an overview of our special education plan by Ms. Marie Capitola. Dr. Melkor.
Thank you, Dr. Fetcher. Almost 2 years ago, we provided an orientation to the district's 2022 through 2025 comprehensive plan. And that process began with formation of a steering committee, a series of meetings that resulted in goals and action steps for that 3-year plan. This evening, we're a little bit past the midpoint of the current comprehensive plan. So this evening, Dr. Butts and Dr. Rosenthal will provide an update regarding steps taken toward the plan's goals, where we're at with regard to the timeline for continuation and completion of the plan. I'll share some information regarding development of our next plan, because it's required by PDE that we begin that plan development process, so we are prepared to submit the 2025 through 2028 plan by next March. And then, as Dr. Fetcher mentioned, Ms. Capitola will share information regarding the special education plan. That plan will be on public display and then presented to you for recommended approval in a subsequent board meeting and be presented to PDE and then implemented from 2024 through 2027. So just briefly to start, the comprehensive plan development process, you see the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle that we followed to identify action steps that were completed, areas for improvement. We continue this process during plan implementation. As we look at the steps that have been completed, we look at student results, district results from our action steps and toward our anticipated goal completion by 2025. You'll hear from Dr. Rosenthal and Dr. Butts next steps with regard to achieving those goals. You see the goals for the current plan listed on the screen. Dr. Butts will share information regarding redesigning effective instructional practices and some of the strategies associated with that goal. And Dr. Rosenthal will share information regarding promotion of social and emotional wellness and personal success of all students. So first, Dr. Butts.
Thank you, Dr. Melkor. Data-driven decision-making can be a critical tool to address student learning and growth and to promote equitable outcomes. Collecting and analyzing relevant data gives greater insights into student performance, attendance patterns, disciplinary actions, and more. Teachers and principals can use these insights to tailor practice to meet the unique needs of their students and school communities. One way to use data-driven decision-making is through specific processes which rely on the review of data, developing strategies and outcomes. The Abington School District has made a concerted effort to prioritize multi-tiered system of supports, also known as MTSS. MTSS is a proactive framework that integrates data and instruction to maximize student achievement and growth. Through this process, we review data and we look at the academic growth and achievement of students. We look at students' social and emotional needs. We look at their behavioral, the discipline, and other things like attendance, as well as other types of academic data, not only just ELA and mathematics, but also anything that the student is participating in. This particular program really comes with an approach of looking at student information as from a strengths-based perspective. This renewed focus is something that is now wrapped not only with English language arts, but at the time of the beginning of the comprehensive plan, we really reinforce the use of mathematics, other academic areas, social emotional surveys, attendance, and behavioral information. In addition, the district worked to streamline the process by using the Intervention Manager tool on the Linkit platform. Linkit is a data analytics tool that allows for data to be immediately processed and available for principal and teachers to see a wide variety of information for better decision-making for students. This use of multiple points of data provides a more holistic approach to better understanding what our students need. Furthermore, our schools follow an ongoing process for data analysis during weekly core team meetings or regularly scheduled grade team meetings or department meetings. During those meetings, classroom-level data for both state and local assessments, as well as other points of data as described, is reviewed in a timely fashion in order to make relevant decisions that impact student learning, growth, and well-being. During this process of a refocused effort with MTSS, the school district has seen gains, especially with growth. All of our Abington schools, for example, in the 22-23 school year, we saw demonstrated evidence of growth with PSSA in grades 3 through 8 and all grades that participate in the PSSA. This growth is very important to us as it demonstrates that when we really take the time and looking at student data, we're able to better serve our students. The next steps for our data-driven processes include the creation of fidelity checks on the use of the MTSS process. Fidelity checks can be used to make sure that the process is working effectively, as it has been intended and been researched for effectiveness. If not, then the process can be changed for improvements. In addition, next steps will include looking at program outcomes to ensure that the different programs or instructional strategies used are truly effective for our students in learning and growth. In looking at redesigning effective instruction, we also wanted to really look at more student-centered approaches. The term student-centered learning refers to a wide variety of educational programs and instructional approaches that are intended to address the distinct learning needs, interests, aspirations, or cultural backgrounds of individual students and/or groups of students. This is often accomplished through using the power of student interest, motivation, engagement, relevance, and voice. The district has increased opportunities for more student-centered approaches to learning. For example, at the elementary level, the core math program is now illustrative mathematics. Illustrative mathematics is a problem-based curriculum that fosters learning and achievement with an intentional design that emphasizes inquiry, math discourse, and exploration of mathematical concepts. It focuses heavily on building math communities within classrooms where students can share experiences, make connections, and collaborate with peers. Additionally, at the elementary level, schools have WIN periods. WIN stands for What I Need. It is an opportunity for students to be grouped for instruction based on their individual needs. By tiering instruction, teachers and support staff can deliver intervention, enrichment, and specialized support to students based on the progress they are making in various academic areas. In this way, students are grouped into 3 tiers. Tier 1, which is usually the majority of the students, refers to the universal or core instruction. Tier 2 refers to targeted or strategic instruction or intervention. And lastly, Tier 3 illustrates a more intensive instructional or intervention program or approach. An example of student-centered work at the secondary level includes the expansion of the senior high school's Pathways program. The Pathways program includes different types of learning opportunities and experiences to provide more clarity to students and their families of possible future learning experiences or possible careers or other opportunities. This would include dual enrollment opportunities with local colleges and universities. This would also include providing access for students to mentoring and internship opportunities for more career exploration. The next steps for this goal include a continued focus on the fidelity of instructional practices with research-based MTSS and WIN strategies. Redesigning effective instruction also deals with accessibility. In this particular case, we look to implementing a set of strategies known as Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Universal Design for Learning, also known as UDL, is a framework for instruction and assessment that supports increasing points of access for student engagement and learning. UDL explores how learners are engaged and motivated to learn, how learners differ in the way they perceive and comprehend information that is presented to them through things like language or cultural differences, sensory disabilities, or learning disabilities. And lastly, understanding that learners differ in the ways that they can navigate a learning environment and express what they know with the understanding that there is not one means of learning that will be optimal for all learners. During the 22-23 school year, Abington School District teachers and administration participated in professional development on Universal Design for Learning. Plans are in place for continuing the professional development for the next school year and beyond. In addition, the principles of Universal Design for Learning will be included in the review of new instructional resources as well as in the development of new curriculum. Through the implementation and use of Universal Design for Learning, the district hopes to increase student access to high-quality instructional programs as measured through a decrease in student referrals and exclusions from the classroom. Also, through the implementation of Universal Design for Learning, the school district hopes to increase student participation and success in rigorous courses as measured by course recommendations and achievement data. As this is the first year for professional development, the inclusion of UDL will be part of future school and district level goal plans as well. At this time, Dr. Robert Rosenthal will continue the presentation and discuss school climate and culture.
Thank you, Dr. Butts. Okay. It is a district goal to reduce student exclusions from school and provide alternative disciplinary consequences. Last August, our policy and procedures language on student offenses and discipline was revised to more explicitly indicate alternatives to suspension to resolve and prevent many of these offenses. Staff training and implementation over the last year and a half has included restorative practices across the district wherever possible. The middle school has begun a Saturday detention program. Both secondary schools have had training in peer mediation, and the Youth Aid Panel, or YAP, operates at the senior high school, which offers an alternative to traditional discipline and opportunities for growth and reflection. Further exploration of new practices in this area include training and implementation of YAP at the middle school. We are also exploring implementation of youth court. Our new mental health grant we just received will fund broadening restorative practices throughout the district. We strive to achieve the goal of improving students' social and emotional skills by first and foremost providing instruction to all students on behavior expectations through PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, bully prevention programming, and social emotional learning programming. Currently, we implement SEL lessons in kindergarten through 8th grade with Second Step. We implement lessons at the high school with Rethink Ed. We provide counselor-led lessons in all grades. There are suicide prevention and mental health awareness lessons at the high school. We teach the new kindergarten through 12th grade bully prevention lessons, which occurred in the fall. We have drug abuse prevention and wellness lessons at the middle school and high school. Positive behavior intervention and supports. As an overarching model, we utilize the PBIS framework of using tiered intervention-based, evidence-based interventions. Teaching students behavior expectations is just the start of PBIS. Our staff just completed surveys on PBIS fidelity in each school, which results in meetings with our county consultant and developing action plans. Each school attends a monthly climate committee meeting where we share activities and collaborate on effective Tier 1 practices, which are for all students. After a careful review of each school's PBIS practices, all schools K-8 pursue the accolade from the state of doing Tier 1 with fidelity. A big part of PBIS includes a monthly culturally responsive review of discipline data. As you know, Abington is committed to focusing on a number of climate initiatives from this past fall, including the monthly character themes. Each school has creatively put together ways in which to promote these themes. Of course, a significant portion of the climate initiative has been regarding bully prevention this year. In this area, we began by having the Superintendent's Committee on Bully Prevention work together last year to update our practices. The result was updated procedures last summer, new bully report forms on each school's website, kickoffs of bully prevention last fall, new bully prevention lessons for all students, student committees in each school that meet monthly, and staff professional development in August and September. The senior high school counseling team has partnered with the Abington Middle School team and students who participate in the Bully Prevention Committee to create and implement Abington Leads by Example, a mentoring program designed to support middle school students who are facing social or emotional struggles. We also have Link Crew at the Abington Senior High School and Web at the middle school, which are student-to-student mentoring. Some of our schools offer staff volunteers who also serve as mentors. In terms of data points, our school teams measure effectiveness of our programs and supports by examining data throughout each school year. The SRSS, or Student Risk Screening Scale, are data that is collected in the fall and early spring and used for identification of students using this teacher-rated screening that need additional support. As mentioned before, all staff complete surveys in February on fidelity of PBIS in their schools, and this helps plan out focus areas. Climate surveys by students, staff, and parents occur in October and May. PAYS, or the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, is completed every other year by students in even grades from 6th through 12th grade. The results come out in April, which give us data on bullying, mental health, and drug, alcohol, and tobacco use. Other data points used by our school teams include discipline data and attendance data. And finally, we have interventions for students either at risk or exhibiting concerning behavior. In the PBIS framework, this is tiers 2 and 3. K-12 counseling team members, psychologists, and social workers at all grade spans offer individual and group counseling and behavior consultation to staff. They have completed threat assessment, risk assessment, trauma-informed training, school refusal training, and they offer social skill groups for concerning behavior of all types. SAP, or Student Assistance Program, is in every building, offering individual and group counseling for drug and alcohol infractions and mental health concerns. We have a school-based outpatient therapist in every building. Our social worker team meets regularly to complete case studies for students facing barriers to success, including homelessness and trauma. The team regularly reviews community resources available to families and students, working to ensure that our district is providing reliable referrals to our families. And finally, we have grant-funded mental health behavior technicians who offer support services to students presenting with extremely challenging behavior. And now, back to Dr. Fetcher. Dr. Melchior.
Could be Dr. Fetcher. The process that you see on the screen are the next steps with regard to development of the next 3-year plan. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, that plan is due to PDE no later than March 31st of next year. In the consideration of where we are at the midpoint of the current plan with our progress, our successes, our additional areas of need related to our current action steps and goals is the first step in development of the plan that we want to develop and have an effect for 2025 through 2028. You see on the screen some of the additional components of the plan that will be reviewed and developed as part of this work by a district-wide steering committee that's comprised of board members, administrators, teachers, students, community members, parents, and guardians, beginning in May and continuing through the end of this calendar year. You see listed some of the different components, including updating our plan for gifted education, updating our plan for student services, revising our plan for professional development to ensure that it complies with current expectations by PDE, as well as our plan for induction. Ultimately, in February of 2025, we will come back to you with a draft comprehensive plan that will be shared publicly as an orientation, and that plan will then be on review publicly for a period of time until March 25th, at which time we will come back and recommend approval of the plan. A similar process was recently completed by Maria Capitola. Ms. Capitola, as Director of Special Education, worked with the steering committee to review the current special education plan and develop a recommended plan that will be shared with you this evening, highlights shared with you this evening for consideration for the 2024 through 2027 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Melchor. This is where I would give my students a brain break. So I'm very happy to be presenting the special education plan for the 2024 through 2027 school years. The special education plan was previously submitted alongside Abington's comprehensive plan in June of 2022. Like Dr. Melchor described, we are a little bit more than midway through that plan. But in an effort to return school districts to their original plan timelines and original due dates, pre-pandemic, the state has issued a revision request for the special education plan to be submitted for May 1st of 2024. The special education department held 2 stakeholder meetings, one in January and one in February, to review the main components of the plan and to foster collaboration and elicit input for the plan's revisions. As you can see, the main components of the special education plan are a reporting of demographics and staffing, a reporting of the program profile, indicators for improvement by the state, least restrictive environment, positive behavior support, and uploading to the platform of our updated board policies and SEPs, and personnel development. I will briefly review the revisions made to each component, inclusive of any action steps that the district plans to take. In revising Abington's demographic information, it's important to note that the data we are required to use in this plan is from the 21-22 school year. That data is collected from school districts in December of 2022 through December 1st child count, and it is not available to the districts via the special education data report until the 23-24 school year. In comparing Abington's demographics and staffing to previous school years and to our current school year, our special education population shows only slight fluctuations within 1%, and we are always aligned to the state average. In addition, Abington employs various teachers, related service providers, and other educators as shown on the slide in order to provide a continuum of supports for our students through our special education programming. The next component of the special education plan is the program profile. This portion of the plan comprises about 3/4 of the physical pages of the plan, and it is just a reportable document. Abington reports to the state on every special education setting that exists in the district. We report the type of special education programming, the size and the location of the physical room, the number of students and their age ranges who participate in that classroom setting, and the teacher who caseload manages the students in that program. This is the reason for the length of the plan. However, in summary, all of our classrooms do meet state requirements for square footage per student and the age ranges allowable in a special education setting. Abington supports learning supports students in all of our schools. However, some of our elementary schools host more specialized programs. Placing specialized programs in just a few schools rather than in all of them allows the district to focus necessary resources to those programs, such as full-time speech therapists, registered behavior technicians, and specialized supplementary and alternative curricula. In comparison to the previous special education plan, an additional 3 autistic support classes were added to the district's program, 2 of them in elementary schools and 1 at the middle school, as well as an additional high school transition program we call Strive. The next slide illustrates the next component of the special education plan, which lists the 16 indicators for district improvement planning and how Abington School District scored in comparison to the state of Pennsylvania. The indicator highlighted in yellow, disproportionate representation by race and ethnicity, refers to the discipline measures enforced on our students disaggregated by race. In prior years, Abington has been flagged in this area for disproportionate suspension of Black special education students as compared to their general education counterparts or students of other races. For the development of this plan for the 21-22 school year, Abington is not flagged in this area. Additionally, we have just received notice of areas that we are flagged in for the 22-23 school year, and we are also not flagged for disproportionate representation by ethnicity. However, for this plan, Abington School District was flagged for disproportionate, for assessment and educational environments. The shaded area that you see in blue will be represented in the next cycle of the plan, disproportionate representation by disability, and that disability category is intellectual disability. We are beginning our analysis and review of that data now. Oops. So indicator 3 refers to Pennsylvania state assessments, the PSSA, the PASA, and the Keystone exams. This area is broken into 4 fields, 3A through 3D. In looking at 3A, participation rates, Abington School District did not meet its target percentages and fell short of the state average percentages for participation in state assessments in the 21-22 school year. This data we are already aware of, and we are well into year 2 in our efforts to increase participation rates in the state test post-pandemic. Last year's participation rates were greatly increased, and we expect this year's to be as well. I'm going to skip ahead to indicator 3D because this is the second area where Abington School District did not meet target percentages. 3D is a little harder to understand. It shows the gap in proficiency rates between special education students and general education students. We want the gap to be small. That's why when you see that our percentages are higher than the state's, that shows a larger achievement gap than the state average. We want to see that the gap in achievement in proficiency scores is smaller than the state average. And while it is smaller in 3 tested areas, it still did not meet our state target in 2 of those areas. However, Abington did meet the state target for the proficiency gap at 26.7% for math in 11th grade, while our target was 40.8. So 27.7 is substantially lower than the target, and that is a positive outcome. In looking at indicator 3B, which shows the proficiency rates of students with IEPs just against the academic standards for their grade level, we see that Abington students with IEPs not only performed better than students with IEPs in the state of Pennsylvania, but Abington met its performance targets as well. Where you see that dashed symbol for 8th grade and 11th grade math, the special education report issued to Abington notes that PDE is not displaying that data to guard against improper statistical comparisons due to small group sizes or N counts, and to also protect the confidentiality of those students with disabilities who comprise that category because it is small. Similarly to this, indicator 3C, which is not projected here, shows the proficiency rates for students with IEPs against the alternate academic standards, so our students that take the PASA, and the Abington was noted as non-applicable across all 6 of those areas, most likely due to sample size. The second area for improvement planning is educational environment. This refers to where Abington students with IEPs are educated, such as in the general education setting versus the special education setting. A special education setting is defined as a setting that only students with disabilities are participating. It does not consider the amount of special education support a student might receive. There are 3 areas that the state looks at: Students in the general education setting, 80% or more of their day, which is that first area. Students that are in the regular education classroom, 40% or less of their day, and students that attend an alternative placement. As you can see, Abington falls below the state average for educating students in general education settings less than 40% of their day. Those are our students in self-contained classrooms. And we also fall below the state average for educating students in alternative settings, such as approved private schools. Both of these percentages are positive, as we want to be below the state averages in those areas. But when looking at how many students with IEPs in Abington are educated in the general education classroom, 80% or more of their day, the goal is to be at or above the state average. According to the 2021-2022 data, Abington educates 54.1% of its students with IEPs in the gen ed classrooms, 80% or more of their day, as compared to the state average of 61.8%. Currently, the state has set our target at 64%, and as of yesterday, Abington is at 53%. Finally, the conclusion of the special education plan includes the action steps that the district is taking and plans to take to improve the areas flagged by the state and to address the special education needs identified by the district. Across the board in all stakeholder meetings during this cycle of plan writing and the previous cycle, universal design for learning was noted by all stakeholders as the most valuable approach for increasing least restrictive environment. In addition to UDL, other areas that we have focused on to improve both least restrictive environment and our proficiency rates on state assessments include prioritizing the general education setting at the middle school level for social studies and science instruction, strengthening and defining our learning pathways for students who are participating in alternative curricula, using research-based interventions for bridging the achievement gaps between special education and general education students, providing ongoing crisis prevention and de-escalation training for teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals to increase positive behavior supports in our classroom. Inclusion from the START initiatives for students with IEPs in grades K through 5 in the new illustrative math instruction. Consistent diagnostic testing to improve our progress reporting to parents using our IXL and Lincoln benchmarks. Expansion of our alternative curricula for students learning in our life skills and our autistic support settings, and the addition of dedicated social studies and executive functioning classes at both the middle and the high school levels. Our special education plan also allows us to illustrate the numerous positive outcomes that have resulted from our continued efforts to provide a rigorous and goal-oriented special education program in our district. Abington has transitioned numerous students back into the district from more restrictive placements, and currently there are no elementary-aged students that are placed outside of our district for autistic, emotional, or learning support services. Abington also runs an extremely successful transition program for students aged 18 to 22 with complex needs called STRIVE. Programs like STRIVE and Active Academy are reasons why Abington does not need to seek out alternative placements for students needing transition services. Events that continue to grow in our district, Best Buddies chapters are opening up all over our elementary schools. The autism events to promote autistic acceptance, and Special Olympics participation this year is going to be huge. We spoke earlier about the positive proficiency rates on state assessments. Lastly, we are proud of the work that our parents did to redesign and reinvigorate the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Increased communication and collaboration has been the result of a well-run council this year. Moving forward, the special education plan will be posted for public review for 30 days to allow for possible revisions. And with recommendation for board approval at the April 16th meeting, the plan will then be submitted to PDE by May 1st, 2024. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure presenting. We will take any questions that anybody has.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Yes, I have several questions. Regarding SEL, have you been able to draw any conclusions about the effectiveness of the data points being measured?
The data points are going to be measured through a number of means. We have the climate survey that will be done in May, so we'll be presenting the data from that as well as the PAYS data in late May or early June board meeting.
So there's no preliminary positive conclusions that you might have drawn?
We only got a preliminary PAYS report. The full report is due in April. Just by looking at the preliminary, the mental health measures have gotten better since 2021. And we continue to look. Well, there's also discipline data that we look at the schools, but it's preliminary at this point for the year.
Okay, and also there were 16 indicators on one of the slides. For number 10, could you give an example of that indicator?
Absolutely. So disproportionate representation by disability means that in comparison to the number of students in the state of Pennsylvania that are identified with an intellectual or any disability category, but in this case it's intellectual disability, Abington is disproportionate to that. So our percentage of students identified intellectually disabled is higher than the state for the 22-23 school year.
So that would suggest an influx of IEPs or other.
So we did delve into the data a little bit. That report just came out this past December, and it will probably be for corrective action programming in future years. There's a mix of students that are coming to us from early intervention already identified with intellectual disability. There are some students that are moving into that category after already existing in Abington District for a couple years. And so some of the strategies that we are putting into place, Dr. Rosenthal is having forums with psychologists to look at testing measures and to review that for non-bias. And we are looking at the alternative programs that we provide to intellectually disabled students and do those learning pathways follow a good scaffolded scope and sequence the way that our general education programs do.
And did I understand you to say that 53% of special ed students are mainstream versus 61% that are mainstream in the state? So would that suggest that you increase the numbers or have a goal to increase the numbers?
Yes. There is definitely a goal to increase that number. Right now, that 53% is an average across all 9 schools. If you looked at just the elementary schools, we exceed the state average of 64%. There's way more inclusion happening in our elementary schools. That number does drop. When you look at our middle and high school models, one of the methods that we looked at to improve that was the inclusion of students with IEPs into general education, social studies, and science classrooms, as opposed to pull-out learning support, social studies and science. We are on year 3 of that initiative, and those students are now entering our 9th grade for the first time, never having been in a special ed setting for social studies and science. Unfortunately, that percent increase was negated by the increase of instructional minutes for reading and math when we reconfigured, and so students were spending more time in reading and math learning support, and it negated that. But we're hoping to rectify that as well. We have a plan in place for September to do some more push-in support and halfway through the block pull-out support in the middle school so that we can see that increase.
And that for the social studies and science, that's for K through 9 only?
Right now, it's K through 9, and it builds every year.
Then my last question, what would the staff-student ratio be for, what would that look like in those classes?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
the student-staff ratio, what would that look like in those mainstream classes?
In mainstream classes, so there's different models. Some students with IEPs can function in a general education classroom with just some accommodations that the general education teacher would implement. We do have students broken out who might need more support, and we're building triads of reading, math, special ed teacher, so special ed teacher can push in. So the normal ratio of that class halfway through would be cut in half with the addition of a special education teacher. Our learning support environments are probably 12 to 15 at the middle and high school level to one teacher.
I had another question, just to go off of that a little bit. When you talk about the state wanting 61.8% to be in the regular classroom, does the state weight the population of special education students per district? Meaning, do they look at what is making up our IEPs, and is that weighted at all in utilizing that number? For example, I noticed that we have increased autistic classrooms across the board. So, yeah, could you just speak to that a little bit? Thank you.
So no, it's a cold percentage across the state, and you are correct. It's hard to be exceeding the state percentage on both ends. We do keep all of our K through 5 students that other districts may reach out to approved private schools for. So that does lessen the number of students that can be mainstream. They're in special education settings, but that is better than them being in full-time special education schools. So it is a double-edged sword in that respect. Also, you see the drop in middle and high school because a lot of our special education teachers are certified in subject areas and can take students out of class and give them smaller settings and provide gen ed curriculum in those settings, and then those students can pass the class on credit and take the Keystone exam and the PSSA, but then you see that decrease in LRE. So we weigh it in the district, and we look at it very closely every year, and we are moving into a plan of it not being all or none. So looking at every single student through vertical articulation spreadsheets and meetings, and building a program that reflects the incoming class, so that program is flexible and responsive to the students' needs.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's an important fact to make when looking at special education, especially when meeting the goals that the state is providing. Like you're saying, it's not based in the reality of what our students have. I think that's something to consider when we're looking at that data. And then the other question I had, I believe, was for Dr. Butts regarding the illustrative math that was introduced through K through 5. Have you seen any data response on that being successful, more successful, or the same at this point? I realize we're only just past the mid-year mark. I was just curious.
We are past the mid-year mark, and right now, we only have just a handful of data points just because of the number of unit tests that would be coming through or the use of our iReady diagnostic. So we're just kind of, we've seen some promise in our iReady data, but it really is a little bit too early to make any conclusive statements on that. I will tell you, and this is not necessarily data, but anecdotally, I have visited the illustrative math classrooms, and I'm excited by what I see. Anecdotally, I am seeing a lot of kids talking to each other about mathematics. I am hearing students as they are using the inquiry-based method, posing questions and posing theories and having discussions. And so it's been very heartening to hear that type of instructional format going on with mathematics. But as we look at more data coming in, then we'll be able to make some better analysis of how that trajectory is going to be. We really have to see kind of like a complete cycle take place.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm just asking a simple question. I don't see any information up there for indicators 6 and 7. You said there were 16, and those 2 are missing.
You're correct. You're correct. They are missing. I don't have an answer for why. I will go back to my data and check it. I apologize for that.
Can you at least tell me what they are?
I don't know off the top of my head which 2 are missing from up there.
Okay.
I know we're not flagged in those areas, but that must be an oversight.
Any additional questions or comments?
I have a couple questions. When you say the special ed population was 1,503, that does not include children with 504 plans, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just have a question about the PSSA participation rates. Are kids being opted out in high school more often? Or what is the cause for such low rates at the high school level?
So it's a variety of reasons. This is the first assessment post-pandemic. We had a very high rate of opt-out that year.
Okay.
Very high rate.
Thank you. I had a question about the MTSS process, so that might be for Dr. Butts. We talked about the MTSS process. Is that occurring at the middle school and the high school currently?
The middle school has begun the MTSS process there. They are still in the process of implementing it. And so that really is the culling of all of the data sets that need to be in place. And they have been working diligently at getting that. They have also done work with their staff on the MTSS process. But I would still say that it is at the beginning of their implementation cycle with, their school improvement plans really focused on really working towards full-fledged implementation of MTSS. Some of the language that we use related to the secondary MTSS has also been like early warning systems. So you may hear some of that language as well at the secondary level. But again, it's I would say at the beginning levels in which they are beginning that whole cycle. And as those who may be involved with MTSS know that it is a process of learning to understand the data, learning how to interpret the data, and then apply what they learn about the data to specific instructional strategies to meet student needs.
Thank you. And is the WIN period the WIN what I need at the elementary, that's their MTSS process? That's the name for it?
Correct. That is a time period that would be dedicated towards working with smaller groups of students. And so that you're aware, WIN is also included in our middle school schedule as well.
So then how is, if WIN's included the middle school schedule, but you said they're not currently doing the MTSS process, so it's...
The full-fledged process, well, they are doing it, but it's still like a work in process. And what I mean by that is with MTSS, there are multiple data points that you're looking at. So you're looking at attendance, you're looking at behavioral. So it's like the gestalt of all of that coming together. And they have made great strides at the middle school level. They're working very diligently towards it. I would just simply say that for our elementary program, who has had a longer history with both RTII, which is response to instruction and intervention, and having morphed RTII into MTSS, just the process itself at the elementary level has been curated and matured more at the elementary level. It's still at a beginning stages at the middle school in which they're working towards full implementation. The WIN periods would be dedicated towards specifically the academic, and in this particular case, it would be ELA and mathematics.
Okay, great. Who manages the MTSS process at the schools? Just is it the curriculum supervisor or curriculum specialist at each building?
Really, our principals take the lead with MTSS, and they have at each of their buildings core people that they work with. So those people at the elementary level will include guidance counselors, reading specialists, currently the elementary math teachers, would be part of that team, the elementary curriculum specialists. So it's really a team approach. Some of the nuances of those teams may vary from building to building depending on the personnel that's available. At the secondary level, our principal takes the lead on MTSS, and again, that takes a whole core of people that he works with, including our guidance counselors, assistant principals, department chairs where available, lead teachers where available. And so all of those people have, in some way, shape, or form, a role that they play within that process.
Okay, and you said that you're gonna be doing fidelity checks on these pieces of the instruction. What does that look like?
So fidelity checks are going to look differently from the different content areas. So let's take one step of the fidelity process to the MTSS process itself. So in our evolution of working with implementing MTSS and the use of the Linkit platform, it has meant using common forms and making sure that all schools were using the same form. So at the very beginning, fidelity meant having uniformity within those forms so that we could really understand what programs or processes were working or not working, what needed to be fixed or needed to be revised to make sure that the process was working. So that's one element of fidelity. Fidelity also means in the sense of ensuring that instructional practices are really aligned to student needs. So in that particular case of the use of fidelity, it's making sure that as we look at student needs, we're really looking at evidence-based, research-based instructional practices that are really going to be targeted to the needs of the students. And sometimes those instructional practices are things that we have kind of within the intervention manager system, which is the specific program that we use within Linkit. And we develop as well for students that have been noted as needing like additional support. We create reports for those students, and in those reports, those strategies are kind of tagged. And so we're able to kind of look and see, are those strategies really working over time with students? If it's not working, what do we need to investigate? Another layer of fidelity also means fidelity of instruction. So a case in point with the newest program, Illustrative Math, looking at some of the fidelity checks of, are we hitting what we needed to hit with instructional practice? And it could be different elements of that. It could be mathematical discourse, and how well are we implementing mathematical discourse, and fidelity checks would be, what are we seeing in the classroom? What are the teachers noting? What are some of the things that we may be needing to troubleshoot? So there are kind of many layers to this idea of fidelity, but ultimately the goal of fidelity is to ensure that our practices are aligned with what is research-based, what we see are the key things that we should have in place so that we know that we're on the right track. And it's a variety of different ways at getting at that meaning of fidelity with such a multi-data and very complex process of looking at the data, of analyzing the data, of connecting the data to instructional practice, and then checking on the kids and how well the kids are learning, because that additional layer of fidelity is how well are we implementing programs, and do we see the results with student learning? So it's a long, complicated answer.
Yes.
I
Yep.
hope that addressed your question.
That's okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the indicators 6 and 7 that aren't listed there are for preschool. And it's the indicator 6 is a preschool environment, and indicator 7 is is also pertaining to preschool.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions or comments? I have one question. It kind of goes back to the 80% of time being spent in class and our ESSER funds running out for some of the support staff that we have, including our math specialists. Can you clarify who else is on that ESSER grant money? Is math specialists and who else? Or is it only math specialists in regard to academic support?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking what is currently paid for out of ARP ESSER in regards to instructional support. So our elementary math teachers, we currently have one at each of our elementary schools. Some schools do share, just dependent upon the size, so we've kind of prorated some of those positions. So there are 7 elementary math teachers. There are 2 middle school teachers, one dedicated to ELA support and the second one dedicated to math support. We've also supported in our ARP ESSER the use of a school social worker that supports our mental health programming and school and community outreach, as well as ARP ESSER and the set-aside grants from ARP ESSER supporting in the past 3 years the summer school programs and after-school programs which exist at all levels, elementary, middle, and senior high school. Programs have also been supported through ARP ESSER, so new program adoptions including the illustrative math program and supports of programs like the personalized learning and assessment program iReady, iExcel, and our data warehouse management system, Linkit.
So once those funds are absorbed, we would have to pick that up, especially for Linkit, if we continue with that, and then making a decision of whether we're going to continue to have those math supports, especially if we plan on sending more students who have greater needs into the general education program, general education classroom, I should say.
Yes, that is correct.
And my second question may have been answered already.
Can I expand on that?
Yes,
too?
please.
In terms of the funding, the ESSER funding was targeted to fill in gaps from COVID. And what those positions that were mentioned as additional positions were to assist our students in filling in that gap. So what we have to do is determine, what gaps still exist and how with our current funding, without ESSER funding, we can meet the needs of those gaps. So I think it's important to note that from the outset, any of those positions or any of the instructional support was from the outset known to be for 2 years. So at that, we have to reevaluate, and we'll look at what we can do with those positions in terms of if there's an area, how can we, with our current budget, facilitate that without ESSER funding.
Thank you. Aside from petitioning for it to be extended, I know that's beyond, but if the gaps are still there, then the support is still needed and the funds need to be there for that.
I would be very much in support of any funding extended toward our school district.
The second question goes back to the monthly culturally responsive reviews on discipline data. And my question is, within those monthly reviews, do you also discuss how that correlates to student achievement? Because if we're not being flagged for disproportionality in discipline, and we are being flagged for the disproportionality in achievement, unless I read that wrong, can we speak to, did you say we were being flagged for disproportionality in achievement?
In identification of students with an intellectual disability.
Okay, all right. So just to go back, thank you for that. To go back to the question about the monthly meetings, do you also connect that to the achievement of students?
So at the MTSS, when, as Dr. Butts was mentioning about what happens for these MTSS reviews, when we're looking at providing support, we're looking at, yes, academic and behavioral when we're doing that. And as Dr. Butts mentioned, at the secondary level, when the core team meets and reviews that data, They're also looking at the whole child and the whole student when we're looking at providing supports.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you so much for your time. Given the time is 9:14, I thank you for your patience. I'm going to ask for a 2-minute recess in case anyone needs to use the restroom, and we will start back. Thank you so much for your patience. We will now resume with comments from citizens. Comment from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comment is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. If you are within the room, please be sure to state your name and address.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a long meeting. My name is Joe Rooney. I live in Ardsley. I have to admit, with 9 school directors, that presentation on the survey and got really no substantive questions at all, it's pretty shocking to me. I hope you're awake and paying attention. I'd just like to go over a few things. First off, ICS was hired by the school district and paid $69,500 up until August. And it seems to me that they were hired to develop a plan to give the board the cover that they need to approve a referendum. In the August meeting, they were talking about $300 to $400 million in capital improvement projects. It was shocking because when I went with Dr. Melchor and Fetcher June a year previously, it was $200 million in this meeting that they had in a schoolroom in the high school, and that was really shocking. Nonetheless, ICS was hired. We were originally paid $70,000 up to the August meeting. Then another $75,000 contract was approved to develop the survey and the website. And then there's a $15,000 work bonus if you all agree to go to a referendum. And if you're watching this, and nobody's here or really, they only mentioned a $15 million bond in that survey. Folks, it's not about $15 million. This is about a $200 to $300 million. And when they talk about $30 increase per month in your taxes, that's chump change also. The school board's already increased in our taxes $262 next year for the year. That's $22 a month. Nobody talks about taxes in per month. That was $360 a year. I don't know why you play that euphemistic game, but they're talking about a $200 to $300 to $400 million bond for capital improvement. I just want to background a little bit. After the August meeting, this is what we had. First, we had a gun in one of the football games, led to an arrest. Then we had riots in the school that led to arrests. Riots at 100 Old York Road led to some inquiry. There are daily fights in the middle school and the high school continuing right now. There was a sad case of a student who was statutorily raped by an SRO that worked here full time. We also have already spent $120 million in $25 million in a generous contribution, $87 million borrowed for the high school project. And we frittered away most of our $50 million capital improvement project. This stuff should have been told to survey people before they were asked to do the survey, because it gives a broader picture of what's going on in our school district. So what's going on since then? According to this, we had a scientific survey that I think they got to 470 people, if I read it correctly before the meeting. There are 22,000 tax accounts in Abington School District, and there's 59,000 residents. And nobody mentions Rockledge at all. Rockledge is completely involved with the school district. Were they involved in this survey? Are they included in it? It's a minute left. Golly, I'll do my best.
No, sorry.
I'm done? Oh, are you all interested anymore?
I have especially a question about Rockledge, because I think that was mentioned earlier, but I'll make sure it's addressed now. Thank you so much for your
So I'm
comment.
done? I've got a lot more.
Thank you so much.
Wish you were interested.
Any additional speakers within the room, please be sure to state your name and address.
Hi, my name is George Bazanis. I live at 942 Crefeld Avenue. I'm a parent of a McKinley student. I see the principal here. Great job. My son's also in the life skills at the middle school. It's fantastic. I saw your survey a little earlier. He also, to answer one of your questions, he didn't take the standardized tests because it just puts, too much stress on it. But I'm here today to speak in my capacity, my professional capacity. I am a Abington graduate from 97, dating myself a bit. I'm also a world history teacher. I've been a teacher for about 15 years. I'm at Central High School. I love history. I took history at Abington. It was called world history. Back then it was called Western Civ. And it concentrated mainly on Western Civ. Then I went to college, got my degree in history. And over Christmas, one of our neighbors had a party, and I was speaking to one of the students there who just took history. And I said, oh, I teach world history. And she's like, yeah, it's called world history in Abington now, too. I said, great. What part of the world do you like learning about? And she said, well, to be honest, we only really learn about Europe and North America. I said, oh, well, it used to be called World Civ. It's called world history now. You're learning about other places in the world, right? And she said, no, not really. We briefly mentioned stuff. I said, what would you have liked to learn about? So she said, I would have been interested in learning a little bit about China. I said, oh, did you learn about the Opium Wars? The Opium Wars are formative events in Chinese history. It's equivalent to the Civil War in the US. She had no idea what I was talking about. And she was an AP student, took honors classes, all that. Dr. Fetcher, I see on your computer you have the Wave of Kanagawa, which is a iconic image from Japan during the Tokugawa period. I asked her a little bit about Japanese history. She had no idea. So then, I decided to do a little digging. I said, what's going on here? I went online and I found an article written from students, and I'll share it with you. It was from the Abingtonian 2021. I'll share it with you. It was, the student that was a neighbor of mine, she was a European American. She was white. A student who is not white, how does that make you feel? You're only learning about basically 1 billion people on the planet. That's the Western world. There are 8 billion people on this planet. And this was in the paper, the Abingtonian. It said, The Black Friend on Being a Better White Person Review. This was written by students Madeline Jameson, Madden Murray, October 7th, 2021. I can read it for you. I don't want to get flagged with time. Is that okay if I read it for you? Hopefully.
But 20 seconds.
20, yeah, okay. Basically, he said, one thing we notice in our day-to-day lives is that classes like history and English should be more inclusive and provide diverse populations from people of all races. For example, during our world history courses, we learn mostly about Europe and their civilization and their colonization of other parts of the world. This curriculum.
Thank you so much for your voice and for your time. I definitely made note of
Can I continue?
Of your concerns. Thank you so much. But I do have a note of what your concern was. Okay. Thank you. Any additional comments from within the room? Mr. Sneed?
Our next citizen for public comment is phone number ending in 1807. Please state your full name and address.
If you can hear my voice, we'll be able to hear you. If you turn down your device, you won't get the echo in the background. Turn it off. Thank you so much. Mr. Sneed, I see we have a second caller on the line.
Yes, the next citizen for public comment is phone number ending in 7331. Please state your full name and address.
Okay.
Hi. If you can hear me, I can hear you.
Okay. This is Karen Jean Charles. I'm on Osceola. I have a question about the report that was presented by Dr. Butts and the others. I'm sorry, I don't remember everybody's name. But in 2020, the 2022-20 to 2025 comprehensive plan pointed out in that report, it pointed out that students of color, along with IEP students, were consistently underperforming. And in the high school plan that I noticed, there was a goal set for IEP, students with IEP, but there was nothing set, no goals or targets for how we're going to improve the education of students of color, specifically Black students, as it was stated in the report. So my question is, with the upcoming new plan that we are in the process of developing, have we looked at what programs, what support, what things are we going to put in place, and are we including goals for that demographic within our action plan specifically? Because, you know, if we don't have a target, we're going to miss it every time. So just like we evaluated IEP students, are we going to look and see how can we improve our students of color? And I particularly, if there's any time left for me to speak, I would like to yield it back to the gentleman who was speaking about the world history, because I think that's important to know. That was an important conversation, and I would have liked to have heard the rest of that conversation.
Thank you so much for your voice and for your time. We have 2 opportunities for comments, and I do hope that you stay around to finish for the second line of commenting. Time cannot be yielded under the procedures that we have here within the Abington School District, and it's not a procedure that I made up. It is something that I enforce. So thank you for your voice and for your time. Any other speakers within the room? Dr. Fetcher?
First, I wanted to just to address the second speaker this evening about our social studies curricula. I'm going to ask Dr. Butts and members of our team to reach out and to have the opportunity to hear the remaining concerns that you brought forward, and also to engage in a discussion about what is offered in those classes, and to review some of the planned courses of study with you as well. In terms of the plan that was just mentioned, the plan development for the new plan has not begun. That was a midpoint review. We will be reviewing the data that was mentioned, and I would also welcome our caller, Ms. Jean Charles, to join and be part of the steering committee when we do that plan development as well. And if there is someone who's interested, please contact the superintendent's office and ask for Dr. Melkor.
Thank you. I too plan to take part within the steering community because it is also open to board members as well. Anything else, Dr. Fetcher?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make note of something that I specifically took note of, and that was the ICS survey, making sure that the demographics match the demographics of our district and township. Unless I'm misspeaking, that would also include the voices of our Rockledge communities. And I see you shaking your head yes. So I wanted to make sure that was so, and I also have that within my notes. So thank you so much for that.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
The gentleman that was a teacher at, I noted you said you teach at Central High School in Philadelphia. Why are you not teaching in Abington since you're from here?
It's not appropriate.
May
All right.
One of the, and it's not a Shamika Brown situation, but I want to make sure that, especially if we have people sitting in the audience who aren't usually here, public comment is for us to hear what your comments are, and there's a 3-minute time for that. It has been noted that the school board president has the ability to exceed that, but I've been very consistent. So for some reason it comes as a surprise for some, but not for others. I've been very consistent with that. It is a time for your voice to be heard without interruption. And if you listen to other school board meetings in other districts, you will see that that is not so. You get to stand up at this mic and pretty much say what you want. And I have taken notes of every public comment for the 5 years, well, within my 5th year because I value your voices. So when I respectfully tell you that your time is up, it is because I have made note of what you are saying. And I want to remain consistent so that no one feels slighted. There's no bias here. You have 3 minutes, and I've been consistent with that for the better part of 4+ years. With that being said, we also have not made it a public practice for us to go back and forth with public comment because that is not the function of public comment. Okay? With that being said, we will move forward with agenda item number 7, which is the approval of minutes. Ms. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation to approve the February meeting minutes?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the minutes of the board meeting on February 13th, 2024, and the board meeting on February 27th, 2024.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher. Just for approval of minutes. Thank you so much. This is a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Ms. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the personnel addenda?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the changes in personnel as reflected in the personnel addenda, numbers 8.1 and 8.1A, and the confidential addendum number 8.1B.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The personnel addendum begins tonight with the appointment of one administrative staff member. I'm going to ask him to stand. Mr. Robert Curtin is being recommended for our Directors of Facilities position. Mr. Curtin began his career with the Abington School District in 1994 and has held various positions within the Facilities Department. On October 30th, 2019, Mr. Curtin was promoted from Property Services Coordinator to Supervisor of Operations. He was appointed to the position of Interim Director of Facilities on July 19th, 2021, serving in that role until Mr. Berge became Director of Facilities in September 2021. He continued serving as Supervisor of Operations until August 22nd, 2023, when he was appointed to the position of Assistant Director of Facilities. Thank you. The personnel addendum continues with requests for leaves of absence for 2 professional employees and the appointment of 1 long-term substitute. The personnel addendum continues with the compensation for IEP meetings, interpreter and translation services, parent meetings, and support and auxiliary staff items. I bring your attention to the retirements of Madalena Bucci, a Spanish teacher at Abington Senior High School, who has served the district for 25 years. Ms. Kathy Hines, an administrative assistant in the transportation department, who has served the district for 18 years. Ms. Kathleen Sternberger, a paraprofessional at Copper Beach Elementary School, who has served the district for 14 years. And Ms. Karen Whitaker, a paraprofessional at Abington Senior High School, who has served the district for 23.5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? As always, we thank our staff who has retired. We wish you a great next chapter, and thank you for your service. Ms. Flanagan?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Mrs. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Ms. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation for permits of use of buildings and grounds?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the applications for permits for use of buildings and grounds as reflected in addendum number 9.1. All permits are subject to change per the provisions of the Health and Safety Plan pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The permit addendum continues to reflect requests for buildings and grounds for meetings and other school events and activities for this time of year. I'd like to bring your attention to field permit number 75A, which is for the Abington Police Department Citizens and Police Together Field Day on Saturday, May 18th.
Questions or comments from the board? Thank you for everyone who dedicates their time to help create these spaces for our students to bond and to enjoy activities. Ms. Flanagan?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Mrs. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Ms. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation for awards of contracts?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the awards of contracts as reflected in addendum number 10.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Tonight, for your consideration, we have 7 awards of contracts and 1 rejection of a bid. The first is for a capital lease financing agreement for one 72-passenger school bus. Next is for district assessment and data management software and services, and this is going to be paid for by the ARP ESSERS grant. Next is for the energy-related facilities improvements for an energy service company to provide an investment-grade audit for energy-related facility improvements, and there's no cost. 4 9-passenger student transportation vans, and this is from Access Funding. 1 72-passenger student transportation bus through a municipal lease program. And 1 replacement compressor at McKinley Elementary School through our capital improvement fund. Wireless access points, hardware and licensing, and about 50% of this funding will come from E-rate reimbursement. A rejection of a bid for 2 9-passenger student transportation vans and 2 wheelchair-accessible student transportation vans. This rejection is due to the district being able to procure the vans at a lower cost through CoStar's pricing than provided by the bid responses.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Did I understand you to say access funding for vans? And can you refresh my memory as to what that is?
Access funding is through special education. So it's specifically vans that would be used for special education needs.
Any additional questions or comments? Mrs. Flanagan?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Mrs. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mrs. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the assessment appeal settlement agreement?
Yes. It's 11.1.
Yes,
It is
please.
recommended that the Board of School Directors authorizes the settlement stipulation agreement regarding the assessment appeal of the property located at 1801 Susquehanna Road, Abington, Montgomery County, as submitted to the board.
Second.
Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Keeping in mind confidentiality of legal matters, Mr. Donahue is here this evening to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Mrs. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mrs. Hartman, can you please read the recommendation for the confidential student matters?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the confidential student matters as reflected in addendum number 12.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Keeping in mind the confidentiality of student matters, I can answer any questions you may have. This student matter is for disciplinary reasons.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Mrs. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Fetcher, any additional recommendations or reports?
Yes, Mrs. Brown, I bring to your attention the conference attendance and professional leaves report, as well as the capital improvement projects report.
Questions from the board? Okay. Any business that may be brought about from my fellow board members? That takes us to comments from citizens. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comment is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. Again, if you're within the room, please remember to state your name and address.
Joe Rooney, and I got to go in reverse order. Ms. Spalding, you're elected by 59,000 Abington Township residents. There's a board policy statement that governs what goes on at a board. You're completely right to ask a question to anybody that you want. You don't work for the board president, none of you all do. And that's really good. If you want to say, I'd like to hear what that man says, you don't have to say, may I say that? You just go, I would like to hear what he says, because there's 59,000 people are depending on you to represent them. If the other 8 people represent just themselves, they're dependent on you. It's the same with any of you all. You all work for the residents, not for the president, and read the board policy statement. That's why you're sitting in your right seats tonight, because I brought it up, because you were violating the policy before that. I don't know why Miss Mallory's not here. You know, she should be here on the phone too. I got a lot to do, but that's how it goes. All right, so get back to where I was before. Oh yeah, with the Western Civ, I was just in Kamakura, so the Buddha at Kamakura. I don't know if you've read that by Rudyard Kipling, but Western Civ has introduced us to the whole world, and the whole world basically to each other. So I'm a great fan of it right there. So with that survey, the survey was developed just to provide responses to questions that would tend towards the affirmative. That's how ICS makes their money. So it wasn't developed to give people good information and then ask what they think. It was just to lead them on. So we have a survey where we asked 4th and 5th graders and we considered their input. That's crazy. The only people who are going to be paying for all this stuff is Abington Township residents. If we look, not the board, if we look it up right here, most of these people don't live in Abington Township. And they had an option to live here and send their kids to Abington School District because it's so much better than where they live. They chose not to do that for a reason, because they did it for their own personal reason, but it wasn't to get their kids the greatest education that Abington could give. 1 minute left. So what I would like to hear on the survey is, how many people move from Jenkintown, from Wissahickon, from Upper Dublin, from Lower Moreland, from Hatboro Horsham into Abington to get a better education? They don't do that. I understand, like 22% of our board moved from Philadelphia into Abington to leave the Philly schools and come out here. But people don't leave, people vote with their feet, and they don't leave Upper Dublin to come to Abington because it's an average education, no matter what those pie charts say. We'd love it to be a lot better, but it's not. And all of the people in the area have voted with their feet, including superintendent, assistant superintendent, chief financial officer, the former high school principal, and a lot of others. So that's what we know. People vote with their feet. You don't need pie charts. We don't need $75,000 to figure that stuff out. So I wish the survey was honest, and I wish we were intellectually honest enough to say the survey is designed to give the board the cover it needs to vote for the referendum. Thank you.
Thank you for your voice. There are mics to the left and to the right of you if you would like to make a comment.
Hello again. I just want to say I spoke to Dr. Betts, for people who are listening at home as well, you don't think I just got, sidelined. Dr. Betts, we spoke with each other. We went through the curriculum. She agrees it is very problematic. Just to tell you some things that I spoke with other students, and I'll summarize instead of reading. You can just Google what this kid wrote in the Abingtonian. The current curriculum is just one paragraph. When you go onto the Abington School District site, it should have a whole list of the curriculums. There's currently nothing there for world history. There is an AP World History that changed in 2019. It was just too much of a subject to teach all of world history, so they changed it to AP Modern. Abington still hasn't updated it. It's the old curriculum. So there is no curriculum there. The only thing you get as a parent, or if you want to be a concerned citizen, there are topics that they're going to hit in world history. So I'll just briefly read them. There's the Renaissance. That's just Europe. Are we learning about the Song and the Tang dynasty? Are we learning about the Abbasid caliphates? Are we learning about, the golden age of Mali? Anything like that? No. First global age. I'm sure we're learning about Columbus and European exploration. Are we learning about Zheng He? Are we learning about the trans-Saharan salt and gold routes? I doubt it. Absolutism and revolution. When I asked other students, what revolutions did you learn about? They said, yeah, we did the French Revolution, we did the American Revolution, Little Russian Revolution. I said, that's great. Did you learn about the Haitian Revolution? They're like, who? I said, how about Simon Bolivar? There's a country named after him. What? The Chinese Civil War. They're like, how'd that happen? Nationalism, imperialism, and then imperialism. When I asked the students, did you learn any resistance movements? Did you learn the Battle of Ottawa in Ethiopia, Menelik, which is a source of pride for people of African descent around the world because they resisted European colonization? And kid had no idea. Did you learn about like Samori Toure? Did you learn about all of these? Nothing. And then the World Wars, and that's it. And that's where the curriculum ends. You have one paragraph. I shared this with Dr. Betts. I want you to know that she was very receptive, and for everyone who's listening at home, they said they will reach out to me, and I hope it leads to a change in our curriculum, because I enjoyed my World Civ class too when I was in high school, but if you're going to call it Western Civ, sorry, not World Civ, Western Civ, but if you're going to call it Western Civ, then call it Western Civ. Don't call it World History. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your voice. Mr. Sneed?
Our next citizen for public comment is phone number ending in 8560. Please state your full name and address.
If you can hear me, I can hear you.
It was the prior caller.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the initiative on that. Any other speakers within the room? Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I would just say that in terms of, the discussion about world history and the topics that were mentioned, I think that I appreciate the connection that has been made, and I also believe that we will be able to share more materials with you in terms of plain courses of study and outlines and syllabi as well. So I think that that will be more informative than the paragraph there.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm thank you, Dr. Butts, for jumping on that immediately. Just looking over my notes in regard to the comment about the ICS study, and I'm going off of memory, which is sometimes can be a little dangerous. I believe that 70% of our demographics are who live here within our district do not have children. And I believe that 70% was representative of that 500. So those data points that you saw, and my ICS rep is no longer here, but I'm going based on my notes, and you're shaking your head. Yes, yeah. 70% of our residents do not have children, and those results that you saw were those voices. So again, that information is on the mini website. If I made a mistake, I have no problem saying that I was wrong, but just to address the concern that you had about whose voices are being heard and why there is a scientific study so that we can eliminate the voices of not eliminate, but take it into consideration people who do and who do not live in the district. I believe ICS made an account for that. Any additional comments, Dr. Fetcher?
None at this time.
Okay, then we will close out with comments from my fellow board members. Mr. Allen?
I don't know if it was just acknowledged, Mr. Curtin, congratulations on your promotion.
Yes.
It was in my head, and then I just not sure if we actually said it out loud, so congratulations. And that's it, thank you.
Ms. Frazier?
Yeah, correction. I mentioned that I was at Highland and Rydell for the Abington Reads, but it was Overlook and Rydell. Thank you. And then also, I have a son who's getting his master's degree in history, and he's looking to have his own classroom one day as well. And so you'd be an amazing mentor. You do live in Abington? Yeah. Yes, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your work and your knowledge.
Ms. Eisenhardt?
Yes, just tomorrow is the Reading Olympics. Our elementary students will be attending them in North Penn, so just wanted to wish all the families out there with all our great readers, our young readers, and our young minds. I'm excited to hear how it goes for all the students.
Thank you. Ms. Spalding?
No, nothing else at this time.
Mr. Muhammad?
Just want to thank Mr. Bazanis for raising extremely important issue. that we see in several social studies courses, just all over the place, right? So not making a specific judgment about Abington specifically. Thank you for bringing the details that you brought tonight. But it's something that is plaguing social studies classes across the nation. And I say that from the perspective of also a social studies teacher, a professor of social studies methods, and someone who's doing the work to address the very issues that you're speaking to. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Ms. Fazy?
Nothing at this time.
And Ms. Hartman?
Nothing at this time.
Dr. Fetcher?
I just wanted to take a moment, this is on a personal nature. This evening, I just wanted to take an opportunity to congratulate my son, who has finished from age 5 to 13 in his wrestling program, and tonight was your awards banquet. So I would like to give a shout out to him.
This work, not just as board members, but as superintendent, will often take us away from family events. So I want to thank you for your sacrifice for being here, because I can read it on your face that shout out will make him feel good. But I also know the sacrifice it takes to hold these positions sometimes. So I thank you for your work. And I want to wish someone a happy birthday since we're giving shout outs. Happy birthday to one of our esteemed principals. Happy birthday. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening.